Hello, dear student. Actually, I am very glad today to prepare this lecture for you about the basic concept on research and the protocol development. And I think that these lectures will be very helpful for you as an undergraduate student to learn better about the research process and basic steps of research, and also the proposal development, how proposal is developed. And I have given my good effort to develop these lectures. And if you have any query or comments, please contact with me with the address or email address and my mobile numbers that you will find in the scroll bar. And you may also contact me on the messenger also. And I will try to prepare more and more lectures on different topics of the community medicine. So I think that you will find a good platform to have a better learning in the public health. Thank you so much. I think you will enjoy my lecture. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome you all to my today's lecture on basic concept of research and protocol development. And I am Dr. Atikur Rahman, as a professor and head Department of Community Medicine, American Modern Medical College. Going to deliver you the today's lecture. Actually, the research is a very fundamental concept in the advancement of science as well as in the professional development. So I think that everyone must be well educated in their academic career to do something better in their professional field. That's why I fix up this today's lecture for you as an undergraduate student to have some basic idea on the research and protocol development. First of all, I'm going to define about the research. Research is the systemic collection, analysis, and interpretation of data to answer a certain question or to solve a problem. So if we explain this definition, you will see that the research begins with the problem identification or raising a question inside the mind of a researcher. And subsequently, he or she undergone through a process to collect data relating to that research question or the problem, and go through a systematic collection of that data and then analysis and interpretation to come to a conclusion as well as the recommendation for that particular prefixed problem. So as it is a process, it has several steps, and each and every steps is very important to to perform a good research that will be discussed in my subsequent slides. Now you, in this definition, try to remember some word, that is data, question, problem, collection, analysis, and interpretation. Actually, these steps will be highlighted, or these steps will be reflected in the steps of research process. Okay, now why people do research or what are the purposes of research? If you see in the next slide, the purpose of research is very wide. The research is applicated in a very wide uh, situation or the very wide applicable site for the research. The research sometimes done to discover new facts or principle, sometimes to testify the old facts or any old principles. Research sometimes leads to a solution of a certain problem, and sometimes certain mechanism can be explained by the research. Suppose it may be drug action, or it may be the explanation or mechanism of a certain treatment option. Sometimes the new tools and concept can also be developed by the research. Research extends the knowledge of human beings regarding the social life and environment. So if we consider all of these purposes of research, ultimately research fulfill the gaps in the information or to find answer to a question. So if you try to remember the purpose of research or utilization research for the written question, please keep in your mind that some important word, that is new facts, old facts, problem, mechanism, new tools, extend knowledge. So these words will lead you to understand the purpose of the research. So as I told earlier, the told earlier that the research is a process. So definitely it has some steps. On an average, the research process had 8 steps, and this each and every steps is very important and to have a good research outcome. That's why as a beginner in the research activities, I think that a student must have a sound knowledge and discrimination capability of each of these steps of research by their particular characteristics. If I start from the first step, which is the problem identification, the problem identification, this is the very fundamental and important steps in the research process. And a researcher must be very careful in choosing this research problem or the problem area for his or her research, as because all the problems are not the researchable problem. Actually, the research problem is identified by some particular characteristics. So, so any problem that will be considered as the research problem will have some characteristics. On the basis of that characteristics, the research problems are identified, and that will be discussed in my uh, other slide that is headed by the research problem. So I'm not going in details about the characteristics of the research problem. I'm switching on the next step, that is the knowledge gathering or the literature review. And when the researcher already identified his uh, problem area for research, then he or she must go through a literature review on that particular problem area uh, to have a proper knowledge on that particular issue. And Now the question is how literature review can be done or how knowledge gathering can be done in the research process. There are so many ways for knowledge gathering in the research process. Number one, by a fruitful discussion with his colleagues, teachers, or any other expertise on this particular field of research. And then the researcher may have some clear idea about his particular issue of the research. Sometimes by reading scientific work like journals, magazines, review articles, and encyclopedia also. Now the question is why a researcher perform these knowledge gathering steps? Why he or she should uh, conduct this knowledge gathering or literature review? Actually, a researcher should perform these steps for various reasons. Suppose to know better and understand the already known facts and concept on the particular research problem. Sometimes to identify the unanswered questions and gaps in information, and to avoid the repetition of a already done work. And then and the other very important issue or the reasons for literature review is to learn more about the research design, study population, sampling unit, sample size, and sampling technique. So by the literature review or knowledge gathering, a researcher can sometimes uh, have a good planning for his future research or for his current research. Our research planning can be very fruitfully uh, planned by the literature review. Now, the third step is the research question. Actually, the third and fourth steps, the third and fourth step, that is research question and the hypothesis formulation, these two steps are the two sides of the same coin. Now, the question is why? Actually, the research question leads to hypothesis formulation. So now the question is how hypothesis is formed, or how the research question leads to hypothesis formulation. As I told earlier, the research starts with the research question, and that's why the intensive knowledge building provides the researcher about some possible answers to the question in his or her mind, and leads the researcher to certain intelligent and logical gaze or assumption regarding the factors he or she is interested to study. And these assumptions are called the hypothesis. So hypothesis is built up on the basis of research question through literature review. The fifth step is the research objectives. Research objectives. Like all the activities in human life, every research should have some meaningful purpose or objectives. Undertaking a purposeless research will be a wastage of time as well as the energy. In general, the research objectives are of two types. Number one is general objectives, and number two is specific objectives. General objective, actually the short statement that express in a summary form about what will be done during this study. Suppose if I provide an example, by saying a title of research. Suppose morbidity pattern among the rural household in the Thamrai Upazila. Here the general objective is to determine the morbidity pattern. Is the general objectives, morbidity pattern, to determine the morbidity pattern. Mind it, to determine the morbidity pattern is the, in a summary form, is the statement about what the researcher want to know. And the specific objectives, these are actually the particular tasks that will be performed by the researcher doing research work. So if the general objectives is to determine the morbidity pattern, to achieve these general objectives, the specific tasks that will be done by the researcher to have this general objective is called, the activities, that activities will be called specific objectives. Suppose in the specific objectives, we may write to determine the socio-demographic characteristics of the respondent, to uh, identify the diseases suffered by the rural household in the last 6 months. And then we can fix up the specific objectives to determine the duration of sufferings of the rural household for the last 6 months. And this specific task is called the specific objectives. Actually, proper understanding about general and specific objectives of a research, a student must have go through a process of research protocol or proposal development. So I think when you go through a proposal development or protocol development for a particular research problem, then your idea about this general and specific objectives will be very clear. I will also discuss about these objectives in other slide also. But keep it in mind that the RFST survey that we performed in our department of community medicine is the proper reflection of a research process where you can find the every steps of a research process. Now the 6 steps is the methodology section. It is again another important steps in research, which also called the planning of research. And these steps of methodology includes the selection of study place, selection of study population, sampling technique, sample size, determination of sample size, data collection method, analysis and interpretation. All this information should be included in the methodology section. And sometimes it is done, actually not sometimes, it is done prior to conduction of or implementation of data collection. Methodology section should be fixed before data collection. So in protocol development or research proposal development, this methodology section should be completed very carefully. So that, because data collection and subsequent process, data analysis, interpretation will be followed by this methodology section. So if you don't have the clear idea or don't properly design the methodology section, there will be error in the future in the subsequent tasks of the research process. Report writing. It is actually an ethical responsibility of the researcher to report writing. It is an ethical responsibility of the researcher to disseminate the findings of his work to others. That's why he must write a research report. And the research report may take the form of a scientific paper for a journal. Sometimes it is produced in a short form that is called the scientific paper to present in a journal as an abstract. Sometimes it is prepared as a paper presentation in the seminar, and sometimes in a very uh, larger form as a thesis and dissertation for the examination. In general, the outline is common to all. Outline is common to all, but the format of report for each of these section may vary in respect of length and details of the style. And the eighth steps, last step is publication. Actually, this is also dissemination of findings and dissemination of findings through publication or seminar. Actually, publication and seminar is not the part of examination. If the research work is done as a part of professional examination, it is not mandatory. Publication of seminar is not mandatory, but it may be performed after examination or before examination seminar may be performed. So these all steps, these all are eight segments are very important for good research conduction. So I think that every student should have clear idea about this research process, and eight steps should be remembered very carefully, as because during exam sometimes it is asked for to recite the steps of research process. Now in the next slide, I will discuss on the research problem. Research problem. A research problem is one where there is discrepancy between the expected and actual situation. Expected and actual situation. Actually, in our life, always we face a problem as because we find a discrepancy in between expected and actual situation. Everything is not happened in as per our expectation. So we may think it's a problem. And this discrepancy raises the question. When the discrepancy is present, this discrepancy may raises the question, that is, why it is happening. When the question have more than one possible answers, then it will be a research problem. Now, the important one is the important qualities of a research problem. Actually, the research process is usually characterized by these four qualities: is importance, relevance, feasibility, and ethical acceptability. As I told earlier, this is a very important steps for identification of research problem. Actually, when you are deciding the research problem to conduct the research, first of all, you have to have provide more concentration about the importance of these issues. And importance of any issues is evaluated by the seriousness of the problem. Suppose now in present situation, COVID-19 is a very serious issue throughout the world. So more fund is allocated for the research on the COVID-19, for discovery of new drugs, for discovery of the vaccination, or other socioeconomic problems relating to this problem, COVID-19. And so research in this issue will be highlighted more. So this bear the importance. Wide application and influence. When the outcome of the research will have the wide application or influence on the betterment of the society, then it will be evaluated very uh, carefully. Current and near future applicability. The research outcome sometimes evaluated at what will be its future or current applicability after the end of research. And cost effectiveness. It is also important when the cost is related to always related to research. So outcome and investment, it should be uh, compared. uh, when the outcome provides more beneficial effects or effects to the society, then uh, more fund will be allocated for the conduction of research. And also the interest of other people. Nowadays, the more people are interested about the COVID-19 disease, as because the government are interested for COVID-19 disease. So any research related to COVID-19 will be highlighted more. Relevance. It is evaluated by anticipation of the information required by the scientists and policymakers. Again, it is indicating the importance. Because nowadays more and more uh, emphasis is given on the conduction of research on the COVID-19. So it is relevance, uh, feasibility or answerability. It is evaluated by subject availability, expertise of the researcher, research fund, time requirements, logistic. So when you are going to uh, perform a research on a particular issue, you should also consider these issues for proper conduction of the research. When there is deficiency of that issues, then you will be failed to perform the research carefully. Ethical acceptability. This another important one is ethical acceptability. Actually, the research should not cause any physical, social, and financial harm, uh, uh, as well as private life of the study people. So it is called the ethical issue. Actually, all the research should be performed in such a way that any steps of the research will not cause any sorts of harm to the study people. If it is uh, if it is not carefully evaluated with this ethical aspect, then that research will be invalid. So if I summarize the research problem qualities of the research problem, then uh, first one is the importance, number two, relevance, number three, feasibility, and number four, ethical acceptability. This is very, very important for the exam. Try to remember this in a very short form: importance, relevance, feasibility, and ethical acceptability. Now, the research proposal. Research proposal, as I told earlier, that if you want to understand the each and every steps of the research process, then you should try to develop a research proposal. When you go through a research proposal development, then every steps will be clear to you. So first of all, I want to define about the research proposal. What is called the research proposal? Actually, research proposal, it is a written document. It's a written document that is uh, it is that is prepared to convince others about the research competency and work plan of a researcher to complete it. So, what does it mean? Is that if you are a researcher, if you want to do research, then you have to prove to the authority that you are so competent enough, or you have a good work plan to complete a research. So a research proposal should contain all the key elements involved in the research process. So when you have learned you have sufficient knowledge on the research steps, then you can able to form a research proposal. Uh, uh, Actually, research proposal should include uh, um, actually this answer of this question, that is what is planned to accomplish, why it is planned, and how it will be done. And these issues should be clearly defined in the research proposal. Actually, this is the format of a research proposal, and these are the points that should be covered in the uh, research document research proposal. Uh, First of all, is a summary or abstract. Actually, it should be in the very top of the uh, research proposal. Summary or abstract, actually it is written in a very short form about including all the segments, suppose introduction, methods, materials, method, result section, discussion, conclusion. All this should be written in the abstract, in a summary form, and in future tense. Actually, you are submitting the proposal as a proposal, and you are committed to do this source of works in future, so it will be written in future tense in the abstract. Suppose introduction, you may write this in describing the uh, uh, background of the topic, why it is so important. It is included in the introduction section, and in the methodology section, you should be writing futures. What will be your study population, what will be your sample size, what will be how sample will be collected. It should be written in future tense. And results, in the results section, you will write about how the results will be presented, or how the data will be analyzed. In the discussion section, you have to write about after having the result, how it will be discussed with the other studies. And conclusion recommendation, actually this is written, actually discussion, conclusion, recommendation, these segments are written after data collection. And in the research proposal, you have to provide sufficient current and update bibliography or references regarding your research. And acknowledgement, it should be written actually uh, uh, in the first in the top of the document, after title page. You may provide the acknowledgement section to acknowledging the people who helped you, who have many contribution for your research, or acknowledging the study population who provided you the data. Okay, and sometimes you acknowledge the people who provided you the funds. So I have written all this section in a very short way. Suppose in the summary abstract section, I written here that it is prepared after completion of the report and provides a quick overview of the work, briefly discuss all the section, except references using one or two sentences for each section of the report. Here I've written that it is prepared after completion of the report, but when you're preparing the proposal, you have to write it before conduction of research, and in future tense. But you have to write it again after completion of the data collection and data analysis, and it should be written in past tense form. In past tense form. Okay. Here in the introduction and background, what will be included in the introductory section? You should write about the short statement of the problem, justification of the study, why you are doing this, your ultimate general and specific objective, hypothesis. If you formulate any hypothesis, then you should write it. Research question, okay, and key variables that will be included in the questionnaire, okay. And in the methodology, methods and materials section, You have to write about the research design, estimate population, sample size, sampling technique, okay, mm, data collection method, instrument, etc. As I told earlier in the steps of research, in the results section, the actual results, any unexpected findings, and also the test of significance or what test you will be used if you are preparing the protocol. Then you will be write it about what the test of significance will be used to testify the data. Okay, in the discussion section, you have to provide important positive and negative findings. Any positive and negative findings, any similarity and differences of the findings with the findings of other works and possible reasons thereof, difficulties encountered during the work and possible errors or bias in the findings, and any possible reasons for unexpected findings. This section should be addressed in the discussion section. And thank you everybody for patient sharing. I think if you go through again and again with these topics, then it will be very easier for you uh, to have a very good idea on the basics of research and protocol development. Thank you.